Hey, everybody, welcome back to this episode of Think Business. I'm really looking forward to talking to Matt Ode, Mustaches for Matt, and MattOdeSpeaks.com. Your story really resonates with me, Matt, because you are a testicular cancer survivor, as am I. I'm 49. I had it when I was 30. Your case was much more severe than mine, and so my thoughts and prayers go out to you and the journey that you've been through. We both are connected through LinkedIn and also Immerman Angels, immermanangels.org, which is an incredible organization. But your story is, I want to kind of go into it for a minute. Well, one, I'm glad you're here and healthy and all of that. From cancer to coma at the age of 24, you were diagnosed with stage 3C testicular cancer. At the age of 25, you were in a 2-week non-induced coma where you faced multiple near-death experiences, having to relearn to live your entire life again. You now help individuals transform their setbacks into their superpowers while teaching them how to create an impactful story and message to share to the world. There's so much inspiration and so much sadness in that introduction. But where I want to start is I want to talk about your near-death experience. That's where I want to begin, because as somebody who has had cancer when I was 30, after 5 years, you are in remission with testicular cancer. I had a stage 1, 17 treatments of radiation, but I decided to go for my checkups for 10 years. And at my 10-year checkup, long story short, I'll go into more detail later, they told me that I was basically dying, that my cancer had come back tenfold, and that they needed to start chemo and everything immediately. And I just didn't feel it. It didn't sense it. And I had them run emergency tests, even though they were reluctant. And so for a day and a half, I thought I was dying. And it turned out they botched my blood. And so had I not been my own doctor in that moment, so many things would have ended up on the wrong page for me. And the doctors pushed back and said the odds of them being wrong were 1 in a million. And I pushed back and said, I want new tests. But for a day and a half, I thought I was pretty much dying. And I'm not comparing that to your near-death experience, but it's woke me up in a lot of ways. It woke me up. And so I want to know what your near-death experience, maybe not in the moment, did for you, but in hindsight.
Yeah. Well, first, John, thanks for sharing that powerful story. And, that is very mentally draining, no doubt, with what you went through. For me, I did go on the physical aspect of it too. So we'll dive right into it. As I was diagnosed with a high stage testicular cancer, I went through 5 rounds of chemotherapy. Then after those chemotherapy, that's where all the complications entailed. My tumor. So what had happened, the doctors discovered an 11-centimeter tumor in my small intestine. One night I was puking up blood, got rushed to the emergency room, found out I lost 2/3 of the blood circulating in my body. Got 6 bags of blood, got rushed into the emergency room, and that's where they figured out all the complications. So once I was done with chemotherapy, they did a CT scan to see what was going on and where the tumor was forming, all of that. And they found out the tumor was forming it was wrapped around what's called your inferior vena cava. Now, your inferior vena cava is basically a central vein that goes from the bottom of your upper body to your heart. So they ended up having to do about a 10 to 12-hour surgery with 4 different surgeons involved to remove the rest of the cancer that had spread to my body and the tumor in the vena cava in my stomach. And when they did so, my body went into what's called compartment syndrome. It started to swell up like a balloon. This is about a week and a half after, and it was, completely unexpected. It started to swell up like a balloon. I had all this swelling in me. My kidney and liver started to completely shut down. I got rushed back to the emergency room. So I was out of the hospital for about a week, trying to recover, and all of this just kind of happened at once. got rushed to the emergency room. They found out that I had so much swelling in my body. They had to drain 7 liters of fluid out of my stomach. I had a cone drilled inside of my head to relieve potential brain swelling. And I fell into a 2-week non-induced coma as well. And doctors thought I was going to be on dialysis the rest of my life. All of these complications just happened in a matter of like a day. And, for me, I had no idea what was going on for 2 weeks, but my parents and the caregivers and everybody, it was extremely mentally draining on them because, the doctors didn't know when I was going to wake. I was in a 2-week non-induced coma, but they didn't know if it was going to be a week, a month, whenever. And they didn't even know if I was going to be awake. And, finally, a story of faith, I don't push faith on anybody, but this is a really powerful story. I had just been dating my girlfriend right before I was diagnosed with cancer. We met on St. Patrick's Day, which is actually an important thing. But she was only dating me for 2 months before I was diagnosed. And she went through all my chemo sessions. When I was in my coma, she never left my side. She'd actually come over every single day, hold my hand and pray for me. And my mom, who's very faithful, held 3 prayer services. And literally on the last prayer service, crazy as it sounds, while they're praying, while Lauren was holding my hand praying, was the day that I woke up, was the minute I woke up from that coma. And for me, it was, I felt like it was God saying, Matt, this isn't the end of your journey. This is just the beginning. And so that was one of the near-death experiences. I had many more if you want me to go into them, or we can talk about that more.
Well, I just want to say, the power of prayer, I think, is a very real thing. And, we all have such, I think, much more layers inside of us in connection to universal energy than people think. I think people during times of crisis, they really tap into that energy. But it's beautiful. So no, I love that you brought that up. And so what does that do, to be able to, you're 24 years old, you wake up, someone says you had a near-death experience, you almost died. What does that do for you? Like you've been talking about, the mentally draining part of things. Mm-hmm. What does that do to you? And how do you go from mentally drained to deciding you're going to be an inspirational speaker?
Mm-hmm. Right. That takes a while.
It's like, in a way, it's like we teach our pain. But what was, I think as we're in the throes of COVID, a lot of people are looking for that bridge, right? Yours happened to be cancer, but that bridge is not, like you said, it takes a while. It's not overnight. But what was that journey like?
Yeah. You as a business coach, entrepreneurs, you can really take this concept into play as well as all of your failures, all of your setbacks, all of your adversity in life is actually a setup for something so much bigger. I always say your setbacks are a setup for a greater opportunity in life. And for a long story short, I ended up being in the ICU for over 40 days. I was in the hospital for 53 days. A week out of my coma, they went to go take out one of the catheters in my neck, had an arrhythm heartbeat, went to cardiac arrest, literally had to do 8 minutes of CPR on me, went to another 1 week coma. After that, I had 4 surgeries, ready to leave the hospital. About a couple days before I'm ready to leave the hospital, my stitches, which I had stitches left to the right hip, bursted open, had to get rushed into a 5th major surgery, had to do what's called an open wound surgery, had a football-sized mesh over my stomach, went from 185-pound personal trainer to 110 pounds in a matter of 8 months, and basically had to relearn, like you said in the intro, my entire life again. I mean, from laying in my hospital bed to taking my very first steps again, John, was 2 weeks with 4 different nurses involved every single day to get me there. So, I guess. Oh, you can say something if you need to.
No, you can imagine, I have known people who have been in the hospitals for a long time. And, you can't just get up and walk if you've been in a bed for 40 days. Your body like forgets how to walk. You have to retrain those muscles. What do they call it? Like atrophy or something of that nature. Yeah. So how did you do it? How did you do it? I mean, mentally, it's like, I'm listening to your story. It's like mentally, I'm sending a lot of love and prayers to your parents, because as a parent of 2 children, it's like you can't even comprehend that. But so
yes,
we've gone through. But for you, how do you mentally in that bed Because I think a lot of people are struggling right now, right? We're going to talk about your struggles, but a lot of people are struggling right now. How were you able to just get to the next minute, get to the next day?
Exactly what you just said. Talk about we hear this all the time, be present, live in the moment. I had no option.
Right, you had no choice.
And what I mean by that is when you are being present and all I could do was focus on one small task a day, I did not overwhelm myself. You want to know why people don't get to where they need to go, why they feel uncertain or they feel lost, is because they're trying to do too many things at once. You need to focus on one thing a day. And for me, all it was getting my ass up off of that bed. And it was not easy. It was extremely challenging, but every day I tried to find one positive thing that can push myself forward. And that's what you have to do in life, in any journey. You're an entrepreneur, your health journey, your relationship. What is one thing today that is going to help you escalate, compound into something so much bigger? It's that famous saying, Rome wasn't built in a day. And that's what it means, is when you put brick by brick, you eventually build an empire. You eventually overcome an obstacle or break through a barrier you never thought you could break through in life. But you have to stick with one thing a day, and then you can maybe do 2 things, then 3 things, but you cannot overwhelm yourself. So that's what I did.
But I love what you're talking about too, because you really have to get what sounds like you got yourself in a mental space that was very positive, just one thing at a time, and one thing compounds over time. When we have about 80,000 thoughts a day, of which 80% or so, I may be getting some of the numbers wrong, but 80%, give or take, are negative, and 90% repeat themselves over and over and over again. In a way, we're kind of in a lockdown with our mind every day, right? And we all know what a lockdown has been like. We've been through it with the beginning of COVID specifically. And so getting to a point where we become kind of an observer of ourselves, I think is an art and takes practice. And so how are you able to kind of be an observer of what was going on versus actually, like, even though it was you, so you could see maybe bigger pictures of this? Like, I mean, some of, I think what you're talking about, I'm putting words in your mouth, are, what you kind of, feel and experience in hindsight, and some of it while you're going through it to kind of, so what was that for you?
Yeah, I think I was really in the moment until I was out of that hospital. And I could finally take a step back and realize like what I truly overcame and what I'm still have to overcome. Because coming into the hospital, I was 110 pounds. And I was, I wasn't like, oh, hey, I'm out of the hospital, it's time to just go back to normal life. No, it took me 2 years mentally, emotionally, and physically to get to even thinking about being a motivational speaker, even thinking about helping other people. And I always tell people this: before you can make an impact in the world, you better be able to take care of yourself first. You need to be selfish in order to be selfless. And that's what it means. It's saying taking care of yourself, because for an example, if you're an overweight personal trainer, no one's going to want to use you as a personal trainer because you're not actually playing the part. You're not actually doing what you need to do. So for me to be an observer and to look at the bigger picture, it took time. It took, number one, my faith, because I realized that, this journey wasn't just about me. It was about, cancer was not just about me. It was about all the other people around me as well. So when I was struggling on certain days, it wasn't just like me versus the world. It was like I needed to use my support system. So I needed to use Lauren, my girlfriend. I needed to use my parents. I needed to use those people in my life. And it allowed me to take a step back and really, perspective is the right word. Use perspective in your day. When you're a lot of the times when we are struggling or when we are having a down day, we get so caught up in the moment that we don't realize that it's really not that big of a deal. And that's what cancer taught me, was all this pain, all this struggle. Whenever I'm having a bad day, I can look back and say, listen, Matt, things could have been worse. So it helped me through that part of that journey, but it takes time. Everybody's on their own timeline. So stop comparing yourself to somebody or thinking that you need to be at a certain destination at a certain point in time, because that's not true. You have to go at your own pace. You have to be patient, but you have to take action every day. I like the word imperfect action, meaning taking action and failing along the way. That's what imperfect action is.
I love that. One of the things I always say is you're running your own race. So stop kind of looking at everybody else. But I want to talk a little bit about, really what you're talking about too, which is mindfulness, right? So, we have this mind, and we must, and I think COVID taught this a lot to people, and more deeply for others who were already kind of on this journey. We have this mind. We have to take time to understand it, right? Because we're in it together, right? For all of life. And so mindfulness training and inner awareness and kind of, just the element of understanding our mind. And so how, as you have been through your journey, you've more than most had to kind of dive into your mind playing tricks on you, because I know what it's like to be a cancer survivor. I know what it's like to have CAT scans every 6 months for a couple of years. I know what that fear and where your brain can go with you in just the most, horrible of locations. And it's where it was maybe 190% years ago. It's still, even when it lingers, the 1-2%, you have to like talk to yourself and just get yourself out of that space. And so just talk a little bit about mindfulness and training your mind.
Yeah.
Let me rephrase that. Retraining your mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think one of the biggest words in cancer space, especially survivors, is called scanxiety, which is the anxious feeling we get when scans are coming up, or when we have a symptom that we think could be cancer again, and it can really get to us. So what I always say is, when you have those feelings, there's a couple things you can do. The first thing I do is I practice gratitude. I practice gratitude every single day. And by practicing gratitude, basically, I write down 3 things that I'm truly grateful for that I can appreciate during my day. And when I'm focused on that instead of what could potentially happen, which really anxious thoughts are false stories that we create that are in the future. We have a future that we think that is going to happen, and it's about the worst case possible scenario. And instead of constantly focusing on that, I put, what am I grateful for today? Am I grateful for that I got up? Or am I grateful for the people in my life? Am I grateful for my health? Am I grateful for X, Y, and Z? And I focus more on that. Number 2 is, it took some time, but when I started giving back to others, it's almost like you can't help others and constantly worry about yourself at the same time. So when you're in service to other people and giving back in some way possible, it doesn't have to be doing what we're doing on a big stage or trying to reach thousands of people. It could just being a better mother, a better father, or whoever it is. And when you do that, a lot of those anxious thoughts, you aren't constantly thinking about that because you're giving back to other people. So that's another trick that I've learned as well. And also, don't be afraid to open up. That is the biggest thing for mindfulness, is when we, especially men here, John, I think, women are a lot better at this than we are, is when we have something vulnerable in our life, or we're going through something, difficult, we feel like we have this connotation that we have to be strong. We have to be this certain individual that we can't open up. But the second you're willing to open up to just somebody like and trust, or somebody you can relate to, it is like all that baggage that's been on your shoulders for months or even potentially years is finally able to release. You can release your emotions. So those are some really good ways to be mindful. Gratitude, helping other people, and opening up when you need to.
I love that. All right, so let's talk about you now. So you are how old now?
29.
So you're 29. All right. Congratulations on getting to today. And I'm glad you're doing well. And I'm assuming you're healthy. And how's your health today?
It's great. The only struggle I ever have is, remember I told you I had that surgery. They ended up removing all of my abdominals. So I have a massive lump with just a mesh holding everything together. So to put things in perspective, it's hard to do certain activities. But besides that, I put very little limitations on myself, and I push myself every day to see what I can do. Good.
So now let's talk about you, the business person, right? So now you have your company. And you're inspiring other people. Where do you think people need the most inspiration right now?
I would say the most inspiration that I see that people need is feeling like they're worthy enough, or feeling loved. I feel like a lot of people right now, especially with COVID and everything, are feeling lonely, are feeling depressed, are feeling stuck, because they they aren't like able to do the things they were able to do a year to a year and a half ago. So I want you to realize that those people that are listening right now, that you are appreciated, that you do have people in your life that love you, that you aren't stuck. You're just at a certain point in your life where this is maybe taking you a different avenue in your career or in your relationship or wherever it is in your journey with life. And I think that's the biggest thing I see in a lot of people is instant gratification is huge. And when we can get rid of that, we need instant gratification now, we need the money, we need X, Y, and Z, we need this, and we focus on the bigger picture, it'll really help us through that journey.
Yeah. So somebody now who is, an inspirational speaker and you're speaking, COVID hits, how did your business morph over the last year and a half?
Oh, big time. So I went from speaking on stages to doing incredible podcasts like this. And you know what, though? I think COVID is what you make of it. Unfortunately, yes, it's going to hurt a lot of businesses, and it was unfair to a lot of people. But you have to focus on what you can control. And for me, if COVID never happened, I don't think I'd have this Facebook community of over 3,000 members in it, of caregivers, patients, survivors, because what it allowed me to do is say, hey, listen, it's more than just me speaking, because I started off as just speaking. I said, I want to start coaching and mentoring people. So I started this Facebook group, and it's just exploded over the past 5 months now. And it would have never happened if not. So for me, it's been more online work, and it's been just finding different avenues. And I have some other ideas in my head too that I'm really trying to expand on too. That's bigger than just coaching and the speaking. That's like going to really take it to another level. So so I think COVID helped me in some ways too.
Yeah. I find that COVID has shifted my business in some really good ways as well. Yeah. Let's talk about, I think it would, make sense to just talk about, for anybody listening, signs of testicular cancer. I'm not always the best one to talk about this because I identified mine just while meditating, and I had no real symptoms. And so I just felt a change in my daily meditation, and I just felt intuitively like I had it, which is why I didn't feel, when they told me 10 years later that it was riddled through my body, I just didn't sense it. And so, what are some signs for people who are, listening today that just need to be aware?
Yeah, so I'm the same way, John, in a sense. My testicle had no symptoms, and that is one of the most common ways to figure it out. So if you have an enlarged testicle, if you have lumps, if you have any type of like warts or anything like that around that area, just go get it checked out, please. Yeah. Don't leave your ego out the door. You can talk to one person if you need to, or just go to your doctor. But some other symptoms was, number one, I started to have back pain. I was a personal trainer and crazy healthy at the time. When I say I was healthy, like no cheat meals, working out 6 days a week. And then all of a sudden, I started getting back pains. I thought it was my, lifting. I thought it had to do with just overtraining. So I let it go, and it just got worse and worse. And at 24, I was just being completely stubborn. So got to the point where it was hard for me to even walk at times. And I went to a chiropractor, but I just wouldn't go get myself checked out at a doctor. And unfortunately, that's when I ended up puking up blood one night, got rushed into the emergency room, and that's where they did a bunch of tests and found out that I had an 11-centimeter tumor in my small intestine. Now, I'm not saying if you have back pain, you're going to have cancer. What I am saying, though, is if you have any type of abnormal effects that last over a week and a half to 2 weeks, you need to go get yourself checked out. That's what I always say. If it lasts over a week and a half to 2 weeks and it's not going away, just go get yourself checked out, because guess what? The quicker you get yourself checked out, most likely it's not going to be cancer, but whatever it is, you get it taken care of. So I'm not a doctor. I'm not, I don't know every symptom possible of testicular cancer, but I've heard a lot of people with back pains. I've heard a lot of people with obviously the testicle, and I've also heard people with lumps in their stomach, things like that, where tumors could form. So pay attention.
Pay attention and go see your doctor. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, 100%. So now let's get back to you. The world is starting to come back a little bit. Some are saying we're in not necessarily a pandemic, but an endemic. Meetings are starting to occur. I think keynotes are around the corner. And so, who's your ideal client? Who do you, who do you speak to?
I actually just got done in Vegas for one of their very first live events. It was a testicular cancer event, and I got to be a keynote speaker there a month ago. So it is definitely starting to be more live.
Yeah.
It's definitely
how many people were there?
About 75.
All right, that's good.
It wasn't big, but it was a really impactful crowd. I'll say that. Very niche oriented, all testicular patients, survivors, and caregivers. That's all it was.
That's great. That's great.
So it was very COVID friendly, but it was really great. But I would say my two ideal markets, corporations is actually one of them. I'll be honest, because I can take my concept, all of the concepts I learned through cancer can also be in the entrepreneurial field. Your mindset, the way you deal with adversity, your failures in life, using something that you went through to make an impact in this world. So I use it for corporations, and then also for more like, nonprofit or cancer communities. I love talking to them, but I feel I can actually relate more to corporations just because when you're telling the story of being a cancer survivor to another cancer survivor, it's like, they've been through it, they get it. It's not as impactful of somebody who's maybe in their job, and then they can put perspective into play of like cancer, and that it's a little more impactful. You probably understand what I mean, John, when you're talking.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. All right, good. So I love it. And how can people connect with you?
Yeah, website, mattodespeaks.com. I have all my social media on there, my Instagram, my Facebook, my LinkedIn. And if you want to connect, if you're looking for a speaker or somebody on your podcast, you can connect with me via email on there as well. Or just go to the bottom of the page, you can connect with me. Or you can connect with me at mattodespeaks, MAO@mattodespeaks.com. That's my email address as well. So I also, if you are a cancer patient or survivor, if you are a caregiver to somebody, please reach out to me because I'd love to get you in my Facebook group. The community is so unique. It is not just like a support group. It is like it's powerful because I use it as myself as a mentor for everybody. So I help you through it, and so does everybody else. As much as I am as a teacher in that group, I'm just as much of a student as well. And so if you're looking for a powerful community, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to get you in.
I love it. All right, you ready for a quick speed round?
Let's do it.
All right. Number one lesson you've learned to date?
Everything in life happens for you, not to you. Stop looking at your life as an excuse and start looking at it as a lesson to push yourself forward.
Why do you think cancer was in your path?
I think it was God's path for me to finding a different purpose and a bigger purpose and meaning in life.
Define purpose.
Something that is meaningful to you that other people need help with, that you've overcame and can make an impact in the world with it.
Finish this sentence. One thing everyone can do to raise their own level of awareness is?
Hope. Help one person every day.
I love that. Favorite book and why?
Oh man, gosh, you put me on the spot here. I like David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me.
That book is amazing. The audible version, because they read it and then somebody reads the book, and then after every chapter, him and David talk about it like a podcast.
I thank you for letting me know because I have not heard the audio. So.
Yeah, it's great. All right, last question. Fast forward 100 years. What do you want your legacy to be?
I want people to know me as a person who never gave up, and somebody who really made a massive impact, not just in the cancer community, but in the community of survivors, giving people, like I said before, hope in an area where they feel lost, and giving them that opportunity to say, hey, listen, there's something bigger in your life that you can overcome.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I really enjoyed talking with you, Matt. I want to highlight a couple of things that you talked about. The power of prayer, adversity, and how setbacks are really your setup. Focus on one thing a day, right? Small steps. Find one positive thing for the day. Take imperfect action every day. Practice gratitude, be of service, open up, be mindful. You are worthy, And I think one of the most important things is ask for help, right? We all sometimes just really can justify why we don't need it, but the importance of asking for help is so critical. Any final thoughts before we kind of close up?
You nailed it, man. Everything you just said, but I love what you said. Make sure you're opening up, especially you men out there. Don't be afraid. You might just start with one person, but if you can do that, will relieve so much of the emotional baggage that's probably been weighing on you for a long time.
Yeah, I agree. Matt, I can't thank you enough. Matt Ode, you're a pleasure. I'm so glad to. I love interviewing people. Of course, every day it's like a mini master's class for me. I love learning, but I love, connecting with other survivors. I'm so happy you're healthy. Thank you for sharing, the depths of your mindset and your story on how you got there, because I know it wasn't easy. So I appreciate it. MattOdeSpeaks.com, Think Community. Appreciate everybody tuning in. And if Matt can help you, Matt, give him your contact information one more time.
Yeah, MattOdeSpeaks.com. And also, if you're looking to get into the Facebook group, once you're on there, you can go into any of my social media platforms, shoot me a direct message. And if you're a cancer patient, survivor, or caregiver, I'll get you into the Facebook group. Or if you are looking for a motivational speaker, just go onto my page and we can connect through there.
I love it. All right. Think Community. Thanks very much, Matt. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.